we begin this morning with a major development out of Washington. Senate Democrats have reached an agreement on a $3.5 trillion infrastructure plan. It includes many of President Biden's key initiatives that were left out of the much slimmer bipartisan bill that is still being negotiated. This new proposal would be passed through the budget reconciliation process, which would only need a simple majority, meaning if all Democrats are on board, no Republican votes would be necessary. So let's bring in Laura Podesta. She's in New York. Laura, you are following this story. This is not a done deal, though.
That's right, Anne-Marie. It is definitely not a done deal at this point. It's going to take some serious persuasion to get every single Senate Democrat on board. And some, like West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, have already come out and said they don't like the price tag and they want to know how we're going to pay for it.
A major step forward in President Biden's plan to tackle health care, climate change, and bolster the American economy.
The Budget Committee has come to an agreement.
A $3.5 trillion package was fine-tuned by Democrats last night. They'll attempt to pass it through reconciliation, a process that'll allow the legislation to be approved without any Republican votes. It's expected to include President Biden's priorities not already covered by a bipartisan proposal, such as child care, education, and additional climate change-related provisions. It'll also have a Medicare expansion of vision, hearing, and dental benefits for older Americans.
The wealthy and large corporations are going to start paying their fair share of taxes so that we can protect the working families of this country.
Coupled with the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure effort to revamp American highways and public works, the two plans together are close to the $4 trillion plus price tag Mr. Biden initially proposed, which drew criticism from Republicans.
We're not going to support any bill that raises taxes, and that was one of the red lines that we've drawn. I think Mitch McConnell has said similar things.
Democrats are aiming to push the newest proposal through the House and Senate before August recess.
President Biden is expected to meet with Democrats today to discuss the details of the plan. Anne-Marie, we know that this is one of the musts on his agenda, so if it's passed, it will be a big win for the Biden administration.
Laura, thank you. To delve even deeper into this most recent development, we're joined by CBS News political reporter Grace Segers. She is in Washington. So, Grace, to be clear, this is an agreement on a budget resolution that starts with the reconciliation process. So what are the next steps and how long could it take?
So, good morning, Anne-Marie. Exactly as you described. This is just a resolution. It will set out instructions for committees, specific committees, to form the actual directions for the budget reconciliation bill itself. So first, Congress has to pass this resolution laying out the instructions. We're expecting the Senate to pass that first, and then for the House to see what the Senate passes and go from there. But this is basically just a tentative agreement, the first step, and now the actual hard work of getting it passed has to happen.
So this budget resolution agreement and the separate bipartisan plan together add up to $4.1 trillion, which Senator Schumer says is very, very close to what President Biden has asked for. But what are the chances that this price tag will be negotiated down and farther away from what the president really wants?
So it's unclear at the moment because right now, in order for the resolution and then the reconciliation bill to pass, it needs support from all 50 Democrats. Now, that means that liberal senators like Senator Bernie Sanders have to sign on to it, but it also means that moderate senators like key Senator Joe Manchin also have to agree to it. And Manchin has previously said that he would be unwilling to support something that was over $2 trillion, $1 or $2 trillion. So it's possible that the bill will need to go down in order to appease Manchin. But Senator Mark Warner, the most moderate member of the Senate Budget Committee on the Democratic side, has agreed to this $3.5 trillion number. So if we assume that he is a proxy for other moderates on the committee, namely Manchin, then that could mean that he would support it, and that $3.5 trillion will be the ultimate number. But the tricky part here is getting everyone to support it. Now, Senator Sanders seems like he's supportive of it, but if it goes down, we'll see how many progressives would support it.
So I want people to understand that this is a bill that was hammered out in the Senate. There's been very high-profile bipartisan negotiations happening up at the White House with a group of lawmakers specifically about infrastructure. That's a separate bill. Could this Senate version imperil the bipartisan effort?
It is possible. Now, both of these efforts are being constructed in the Senate. One of them, as you said, is just Senate Democrats trying to hammer out President Biden's infrastructure priorities that aren't included in this bipartisan bill that was crafted by Biden and a group of bipartisan senators. So it's a bit tricky. A lot of Republican senators have said that they would not support the bipartisan bill if it was linked to the larger reconciliation bill. Biden initially said that the two were linked. He then had to backtrack on that a little and say that they weren't linked. But for all intents and purposes, the Senate and Congress as a whole are going to try to pass the two things at the same time. Now, this may give Republicans who are already on the fence about supporting this bipartisan bill the good excuse to kind of just back away and say that they're not willing to spend that much money, including the larger reconciliation bill. Of course, I think that the core negotiators on the Republican side, there are about 5 or so of them, are very committed to this bipartisan deal, and they're probably going to stick to it no matter what.
So you brought up something that's been a sticking point all along, which is the price tag. Have Democrats indicated how they might pay for something like this?
So they haven't yet given specifics, but we can assume that it's going to include some of President Biden's ideas that he had floated about paying for the bipartisan package, which ultimately were nixed by Republicans, but could probably be supported by a number of Republicans, number of Democrats. So that includes raising the income tax for the wealthiest Americans, raising the corporate minimum tax rate from 21% to 28%. President Biden has committed to not raising taxes for anyone making under $400,000 a year, or for small businesses. So these pay-fors will probably not include raising taxes on those making under $400,000 a year, but you can expect that there will be significant tax increases for the wealthiest Americans and corporations.
All right, Grace, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So later today, in addition to his trip to Capitol Hill, President Biden will meet with a bipartisan group of governors and mayors to discuss the infrastructure framework and the effect that it would have on states and cities around the country. We will be covering that event live starting at 3 p.m. Eastern right here on CBSN.